Hey Monica, so this is the recipe for the peanut butter granola bars. There are four ingredients in the peanut butter granola bars. There's honey, there is coconut oil, old-fashioned oats, and creamy peanut butter. You want the old-fashioned oats, not the quick oats. The recipe calls specifically for old-fashioned or rolled oats. The quick oats will break apart too much in the recipe. And a quick note about coconut oil. It's actually like rock solid, like Crisco, but harder than Crisco. So to get it out, I use a butter knife to kind of break it up and make it a little more malleable and put it into the measuring cup and pack it in. With coconut oil, it's kind of expensive, so the best place in the city to get it at a reasonable price would probably be Trader Joe's. I got this one at Walmart, but I know Costco sells it at a reasonable price. But if you buy it in like a regular grocery store, it's going to be a little pricey, but it lasts quite a while. And it's actually a great substitute for butter in recipes. It has a slight sweetness to it. And one of the properties of it is that at room temperature, it is hard, like rock hard. But when it gets to be about 70, 75 degrees, it turns to a liquid. And once it's in its liquid form, then it'll mix very well with the honey and the smooth peanut butter. The things that I use to make this, which will be in the recipe that you see, with a few embellishments that I do, is it's a medium to large size bowl. I have two of them. And then I have a very sharp knife for cutting them later, a butter knife to break up the coconut oil, two spatulas. One is kind of a scraper spatula, and then the other one is sort of the flipper type spatula, a whisk, and this is a silicone spoon. Wooden spoon is fine as well. I like using silicone with gooey stuff because it comes off a little easier than on a wooden spoon. The whisk is kind of important, but you could just use a spoon if you don't have a whisk. And then measuring cups, I only use the half cup, the 1/3 cup, and the 1/4 cup measuring cups. It's important to use these kinds of cups just because you can pack the contents in and get an exact measurement, unlike like those 1-cup glass ones or 2-cup glass ones. It's really hard to get exact measurements with those things. The recipe calls for a 9x9 pan, which this is. You can also use a 9x13, the more traditional size pans for like brownies and any of your pan cookies. The thing about using a 9x13 pan is that your bars will become much more thin. And I kind of like the thickness of the bars that I made for the theater using a 9x9 pan. And we're not going to do this for this recipe because you mentioned you didn't want to do it, but in case you change your mind or do this in the future for somebody, you can do add-ins. For the theater, I did semi-sweet chocolate chips in one batch. I did cinnamon chips in another batch. You could also chop up some of your favorite nuts. My favorite nut is pecans. You can chop those up and put them in, or you can even do a combination of a few things. I think when I made a batch for Artie, I did a combination of the semi-sweet chocolate chips plus peanut butter chips, which added a little more peanut butter flavor to the overall recipe. And then you mentioned not using a microwave. In the recipe, it calls for you to put the liquid contents, the honey, coconut oil, and the peanut butter in a bowl, microwave for just 30 seconds. That's all you need. And and then you whisk it all together and it becomes like a liquidy, creamy, smooth kind of concoction. I'm going to do a double boiler, so I got a pot that's bigger than the bowl that I'm going to be using, and I put some water in the bottom of it, and we'll put that on the stove, and we'll just do a double boiler. And the purpose of a double boiler basically is to heat or melt something that's not going to scorch the contents of your glass bowl. So the ingredients will become liquefied, but they won't boil or be overly cooked. All right, so I'm gonna cut this off and then we'll get started. Okay, Monica, so the recipe calls for 2.5 cups of the old-fashioned oats, which I will put in this bowl here. I'm probably gonna need to shut this off to get the other cup, but we'll see how this goes. Okay. All right. There's a second cup. And then I'll use my half cup to get the 2.5 cups. All right. So that's about 2.5 cups. I'll just put a few more in there just to make sure I have enough. Okay. So that's in the one bowl, and you're done with that. Next, we'll do the liquid. Now, before I start doing battle with the coconut oil, if I were to do add-ins, I would. I just measured a cup of the semi-sweet chocolate chips. I would dump them into the oats, and then with a spoon, I would mix them very thoroughly just to get them like really incorporated into the old-fashioned oats. Okay. Now, with the coconut oil, this is the challenge, is that it is, actually it's kind of, it's a little soft-ish. No, it's not. But basically, you need to kind of dig in and get clumps of it. I don't know if you can see that I'm getting trying to break up little sections of it, so you can kind of see the spoon, or the knife rather, the butter knife. Now I'll take this and with my 1/3 a cup, I'll just put it into the cup. I should probably have a fixed camera here, but I'll set it into the cup and then get some more, and you kind of get the idea. I'm just kind of trying to pack it in, but it's a big mushy mess. Let me shut this off. I just finished packing it into the 1/3 of a cup measuring cup. And then once I do that, then I'm just going to release it all. Of course, you know, it's a solid, so I need to use the knife to release it into the bowl, which I'll do. Okay, so just plop it all into the bowl there. Okay, and so that's 1/3 in the bowl. Now I'm going to do another third. So the recipe calls for 2/3 a cup of the coconut oil, 2/3 a cup of the honey, and 2/3 a cup of the creamy peanut butter. So let me do the other coconut oil, and so I packed another cup of the coconut oil, and I'm going to drop it into the bowl. And then another note about coconut oil is that it does not go rancid if you leave it on your shelf. You don't have to refrigerate it, and it has a shelf life of at least 6 months. In fact, if you put it in the fridge, it's going to make it very difficult to work with it when you take it out to actually use it. So it's probably better to keep it on your shelf or in your cupboard. But just know that if your temperature gets kind of warm in your apartment, that it will kind of liquefy. The reason why I don't warm it up in order to try to make it easier to measure it out is I don't know that it's a good idea to keep going back and forth between like taking an entire container and putting it in a double boiler or putting it in the microwave and kind of making it loose or softer to work with it, and then have it, you know, go back to its the entire container of coconut oil. Then is going to keep, every time you use it, you're going to be liquefying it and then hardening and liquefying it. And I just don't think it's probably good to be doing that back and forth all the time. So it's a bit of a challenge working with it, and that's why I use the butter knife to kind of break it up. But I think it's probably better overall if you have a big container of coconut oil to do it that way rather than trying to warm or soften it to make it easier to work with. So now I'm going to do the honey. I got my little honey bear here. And again, it's 2/3 of a cup. So I'll be kind of just squirting this honey into the 1/3 of a cup. And of course the challenge is to fill the cup but not go over. And of course I'm right-handed, I'm holding the camera with my right hand, making the squeezing a little harder, but you get the idea. So I'm gonna move ahead and finish this up and then do another cup as well. It's full. So I do the coconut oil first because it creates kind of a slippery base to the measuring cup so that the contents of the honey will slide out a little easier. And then I'll use the butter knife to kind of, let me set this here. I'll just kind of scrape with the butter knife to get the rest of the honey out. Try to get all of it out, and then we're going to refill this measuring cup with honey so that we have 2/3 cup of honey, 2/3 of a cup of the coconut oil, and then the peanut butter is another sticky gooey operation. So I'm going to refill this cup and then empty it out, and then I jumped ahead a little bit and filled this measuring cup, the 1/3 a cup, with creamy peanut butter. And like I said, I really pack it in, and then I use the knife to kind of, you know, smooth over the top to really, and then scrape so that we get like really exact measurements. That's one thing that I get really particular about is doing exact measurements. So there are 2/3 of a cup of the coconut oil. There's 2/3 of a cup of the honey in the bottom, and then I'm doing my first 1/3 a cup of the peanut butter, and I'll do another one, and then we'll start the double boiler.